When I was 12 years old, I was a runaway at the time, and my dad had picked me up. We went kind of on a road trip, so he said. We ended up going in the mountains. Basically, he had grabbed a shovel and he told me to start digging. At one point in the end, when the hole was about 6 feet deep, I started to really panic, and that's when my father pulled out his .357 and pointed it at me. He basically told me to strip down naked and crawl in the hole. As I laid there, my dad kind of disappeared for a second, and I heard his footsteps wander off. Ultimately, that's when, staring up at the sky, laying in the dirt, I reached out to Jesus and just asked him to come save me, to do something. I heard the footsteps coming back, and my thought in my mind was I was just going to see him standing over me, and he was going to shoot, and I pictured the dirt being shoveled back over me. But that's not what happened. He came back and very frantically asked me to get out of the hole really, really quick. It just so happened that in this desolate area of the mountains, there was a lady and her husband walking their dog about 100 yards away from us. So he panicked and I was able to get out of that hole. And at that point, I was able to escape. So I ran away and made my way to Las Vegas. And there, my life of crime started. Selling drugs, robbing people, hurting people, running from the police every single day. The cops were the ones trying to put me back in with my father. That situation, they didn't believe the story. They tried to return me multiple times, and they became my enemy at that point. Every time I saw them, I despised them. I looked down on them, and that's where my mindset was. They were my enemy. Deep down, I always had a faith, and I always had faith and trust in Jesus. I always knew he was there. I knew God existed. But I never lived the life of Jesus. I never really walked that path. He was always there telling me, come to me, come to me. And I always would run or make an excuse. My struggles with God, my conversation with God was, how can I fulfill, your will and come to you when I have a wife that is not connected with you? And literally about a month later, she picked up the Bible on her own and found Grace Church. And I was just like, wow, what is going on? He said, what's your excuse now? What's your excuse? When she first told me about Rooted, I was like, oh wow, this is going to be interesting. Kind of outside of my comfort zone, not really comfortable in crowds that I didn't know, talking about Jesus. I never really been there before. So I was hesitant, wasn't sure. Something just kept telling me just to go.
My name is Scott Durst. I'm the Director of Safety and Security here at Grace Church. I've spent most of my life, my careers, chasing bad guys. Whether I was, playing cops and robbers or going after the bad guy, putting him away, and that kind of just followed me as I grew older, and eventually both going into the military and law enforcement. So I'm a big justice guy. It's black and white. There's no gray area for me. And I found that was just gnawing at my heart, and that I had to do something different. I think this is when I started looking towards God to help me answer some of these questions and pull me in a different direction. So part of this, I had to go to Rooted. That was a requirement of my position here. And I was like, okay, I'll check the box. I remember the first meeting we had, I was looking over across the room to a younger man that he was there with his wife, and just starting to get we were locking eyes. We didn't really understand what our roles were, who we were, but as the weeks went on, we got a chance to start to understand, see their story. He and I were from definitely different sides of the tracks.
So at the age of 15, close to 16, I committed a very serious crime of armed robbery. And I remember during that whole fiasco, somebody happened to hit the silent alarm. On the way out, I was the first one out of the bar. And I was taking my mask off, and I heard the words freeze. And I looked to my right, and I saw 2 police officers by the squad car. And as soon as I looked at them, the shotgun went off. And it was just a loud crack, and everything went white. And it just went right back normal. My ears were ringing. And I started running across the street, and then I heard shots follow by the officer's sidearm. And I looked down and I saw my jacket that I was wearing, and it was blown to shreds. My knees buckled, and I fell to the ground, and then the cops swarmed in and got on top of me After things had calmed down, they called the paramedics. They got there and stripped off all my clothes, looking for, the damage, and there wasn't a scratch. The cops didn't understand. They were being questioned. Did you give him a warning shot? Did you shoot at his legs? And I vividly remember the cop saying, I had my sights right on him. I shot to kill. There's no way I missed. At that point, I realized, in the midst of me doing all these horrible things, that God didn't want me to die.
I remember when I heard that story and I was putting myself in the place of that police officer at the time and feeling the same emotions that that police officer had during that incident. I was on that side of the story. Kenny was on the other side.
And this guy who used to represent what was my enemy. And here he was striving for the same thing, trying to make the same connection with God. And I realize now that it doesn't matter your background, where you come from, what side of the tracks you grew up on. If you strive to have a relationship with Jesus, you're all the same to him. Each of us has taken our own path, and God has laid out that path for a specific reason. And ultimately it brought, two people from different backgrounds on completely opposite sides together through Christ, and it's amazing.
God is changing my heart at this point. He's allowing me to see people for who they really are.
I realized it's when we become vulnerable and really put ourselves out there and share our stories and connect with each other and realize that we're the same and that, we're all brothers and sisters through him. That's when the true connection takes place.
There's some things that I don't like to talk about, no. There's some things that I'd rather keep underground. Behind my smile, my words, I heard. There's some things that I don't like to talk about. I frame my whole life through a perfect filter. It's time for me to paint a different picture. 'Cause when we get real with each other and we share our